In the previous video, we created a table sketch. This will help us easily determine which cell to enter specific data into. In cell A1, I will enter the name of the initial data block. In cell A2, I will enter the text, operand. In cell B2, value. In cell A3, number 1. Note that if you press enter and start typing number 2 into cell A4, Excel will immediately suggest the option we just entered after you type the first letter. This feature is called AutoComplete. If we enter text that we have already used in the same column, the program will automatically suggest it. If the suggestion suits us, we can simply press enter, and the text will be inserted into the current cell. This is a very convenient function when working with similar types of data. In our case, the only thing left to do is change the number to 2. This can be done in one of the ways we already know, either by changing the value in the formula bar or by double-clicking on the cell to edit its contents. Another less common method is to select the cell and then press the F2 function key, which will make the contents of the cell available for editing. Next, let's create a calculation block. In cell A5, we will enter the name of the block. In the next row, we need to enter the names of our operands, number 1 and number 2. We can enter them manually, but it is much easier to copy them. We have already discussed the copy operation earlier, but it has many features worth mentioning now, as they greatly simplify the process of creating the table. First, let's talk about the clipboard. The Windows operating system has its own clipboard, also known as the system clipboard. When you select a file and copy it using the context menu, the file is placed in a temporary area of your computer's memory. As a result, you can paste the copied object to any other location on your computer's hard drive. The data in the system clipboard is stored only until you copy something else. That is, if you copy something again, the old data in the clipboard will be deleted and replaced with the new data. The clipboard is also cleared when you restart or shut down your computer. To work with the system clipboard, it is very convenient to use keyboard shortcuts, Ctrl-C for copying and Ctrl-V for pasting. There is also a combination, Ctrl-X, which allows you to cut data, meaning it deletes the data after pasting it to another location. We can also use the system clipboard in Excel, and all three shortcuts are available to us. This means that I can select cell A3, press Ctrl-C, and the contents of that cell will be placed on the clipboard. Next, I will place the cursor in cell B6 and press Ctrl-V to paste the contents of the clipboard. For the second operand, I will need to repeat this operation. By the way, there is another faster way to paste data from the clipboard. First, copy the data from the cell using one of the previously discussed methods. Then place the cursor in the desired cell and simply press enter. The data will be pasted. Since we are using the system clipboard, it's important to understand that any copy operation you perform outside of Excel will also utilize the clipboard. This means that the cell data you copied earlier will be overwritten by the new data. While the system clipboard is convenient, it does have some limitations. In our case, repeating the copying operation twice for each operand is manageable, but if you need to copy information from 10 or 20 cells, this method can become quite labor-intensive. Fortunately, Excel, or more precisely the Microsoft Office suite, has its own extended clipboard that simplifies such tasks. With this feature, you can copy multiple text fragments or graphic objects and paste them not only into Excel spreadsheets but also into other Office documents. The extended clipboard can store up to 24 fragments at a time. To open the extended clipboard, click the icon in the lower right corner of the clipboard toolbar on the Home tab. First, let's copy the contents of cell A3 by selecting it and pressing Ctrl-C. Then, do the same for cell A4. Note that the last copied fragment appears at the top of the clipboard window. Next, let's delete the previously pasted data in cells B6 and C6, and fill them using the extended clipboard. To do this, select cell B6 and click on the desired text fragment in the clipboard window. Repeat this for cell C6. Next to each clipboard object, there is a button that allows you to insert the fragment into the document or delete it from the clipboard. If you need to completely clear the clipboard, you can do so by pressing the Clear All button. Now we can finish working on the table framework by entering the remaining data. This process is no different from how we entered data into the table earlier, so I won't go into detail about it. In the end, the table frame will look like this. Now it's time to start entering initial data and calculation formulas. First, we need to input the initial data, which means specifying the two numbers we will work with later. In cells B3 and B4, enter any two numbers, for example, 3 and 5. If you need to enter a negative number, simply type a minus sign first, or enclose the number in parentheses. We also have two columns in the calculation block. These duplicate the operand values, and while we could do without them, let's use them to demonstrate working with repeated data. First, let's look at cells B6 and C6. In these cells, we just copied the text from cells A3 and A4. However, what happens if we change the name of the operand in the future? We would then need to change the name in each cell separately, which is quite inconvenient. To resolve this issue, we can change the text to a reference. To do this, simply select cell B6, enter the equal sign, and point the mouse to cell A3. After pressing enter, the same name will appear in cell B6 as in cell A3. If the value of cell A3 changes now, the name in cell B6 will automatically update as well. We will do the same for cell C6, inserting a reference to cell A4. Now let's move on to filling in the data in the columns below. This is where the operand values are specified, and we can fill these cells in one of the following ways. Firstly, we can enter the operand values into each cell manually, which is the simplest but inefficient method. Secondly, we can enter the operand values only in the first two cells, B7 and C7, and then use autofill. To do this, first select these cells with the mouse. Next, move the mouse pointer to the fill and drag the entire selected range down to the last row. While this method allows us to fill the columns with data more quickly, it does not create a link to the initial values in the initial data area. This means that if we change any of the operands, we will have to repeat all these operations again. Instead, let's create references in cells B7 and C7 to cells B3 and B4, just as we did with the column names. After that, we can repeat the autofill operation. However, this will lead to an unexpected result because we used relative references, which change automatically during the autofill process. To avoid this issue, we need to use absolute references. Understanding absolute and relative references is crucial when working with spreadsheets, so if you're not familiar with this concept, I recommend watching a detailed video on the topic. To make the references in cells B7 and C7 absolute, you can use the formula bar. Select the cell address in the formula bar or simply place the text cursor inside the reference and press the F4 function key. Do the same for the value in cell C7. And then repeat the autofill operation. As a result, we will have a range of cells with absolute references. This approach is effective, but there is another way to quickly fill formulas across a range of cells. Let's select the range of cells B8-C12, starting from any upper cell. We can delete the contents of these cells by pressing the delete key. Now, we will enter the equal sign from the keyboard, which will appear in the cell from which we started the selection. Then, using the up arrow key, move the cursor to the cell above, which contains the value we want to reference. The reference to this cell will be inserted into the formula. Finally, press Ctrl-Enter to fill all cells in the selected range with references. In this case, each cell will reference the one above it. This method works well because we will change the values in the initial data entry block, which means that these values will first be transferred to cells B7 and C7, and then referenced by the cells in the 8th row. The cells in the 9th row will reference the 8th row, and so on. It is not even necessary to have absolute references in cells B7 and C7 for this method to work. So, we've covered data entry. In the next video, we will discuss formulas. See you then.